Morning, everyone. Welcome to our the next of our regular weekly community AMAs. It's the 7th of February here in Australia. I think it's the 6th of February in most of the rest of the world, though. My name's Alcatraz. I'm the lead designer at Raini Studios, working on our flagship title, Raini: The Lords of Light, which is a competitive digital trading card game. And yeah, a little bit different to our usual format this week. We've actually got, as you can probably see on your screen, a lot of guests who are joining us. So I'd love to just go around the virtual room, get everyone to sort of introduce themselves, who you are, and just as a fun icebreaker question, I would love to know your favorite kind of pasta.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm fine with starting myself. So I'm Noah Brame. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at MetaOps, a tactical 6v6 first-person shooter. But my favorite kind of pasta has got to be chicken Alfredo, to be honest, with some fettuccine noodles. Because when I was growing up, one of my friends' moms used to make it all the time, and it was like literally the best Alfredo I've ever had. So it's just stuck with me, and I've been obsessed with it ever since.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
Coop. I'm
Sorry,
a. You good?
sorry, man. Go. Sorry. Oh, yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I'm in marketing at Avalabs for gaming. So my title says researcher. So I'm here researching. Basically, get to play games and think about games, talk about games all day. And I we're here. Well, I'm here because the guys invited me after this tweet about getting feedback from your gamers in alpha and beta and how that goes. And so I'm excited to talk about it.
G'day guys, Draz Nibar, just a member of the community, here to help facilitate the AMAs and make sure I pick up all the questions for the guys to answer. I'm Australian, so my favourite thing, I suppose, with pasta in it would have to be spaghetti bolognese. It's like a staple Australian food, really, for families. All right, thanks guys.
I mean, you can't go past the classics, right? Like, a good bowl of spag bowl is always good. Actually, one thing I picked up relatively recently is adding some chili flakes into spag bowl because it gives it that nice little bit of a kick to it, which is always good.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. So, Coop, I'd love to get you to sort of, I guess, kick this off and just, I mean, give us a bit of background of yeah, that Twitter post, and sort of where the question that you asked, and then yeah, we'll jump in and I guess just yeah, have a bit of a roundtable and discuss it from there.
Yeah, cool. So I wish I had the tweet up, but the gist of it was people are talking about alpha and beta testing, and especially in Web3, and how a lot of times it feels like games are putting out alpha and beta invites, and some players are picking it up from the perspective of like, oh, I want to see the game, I want to play the game, and maybe not quite understanding what an alpha and beta is really about. And that sparked some interesting discussion on like, are you potentially hurting yourself as a developer by, inviting a lot of testers in who then just feel like, the game wasn't as polished as they hoped. And, to that end, is there a lot of benefit to gain from having testers, or a wide variety of testers? Like, does it actually help the developer, or is it just a hindrance because of this like new Web3 aspect? I thought it was really interesting conversation, not something that I had thought a whole lot about. So that's really the topic, I think.
Yeah, cool. I mean, there's a lot to sort of break down there, and especially I guess looking at it from a Web3 perspective compared to I guess a more traditional gaming studio perspective there as well.
Yeah,
Um, Probably one of the really big things that I've noticed because I'm still relatively new to Web3. Like I had to Google what arbitrage was last night. Like I'm still very like I'm still very much coming from a Web2 background, and probably the biggest difference, honestly, from my perspective, is what a Web3 studio would consider like an alpha release and something they would have public or at least community facing is very different to what I've experienced in more traditional Web 2, where generally speaking, our communities have much more access to developers during the development process, but much earlier access to the game itself, compared to what, maybe like say a more traditional, say, mobile studio might actually put out there. No, I'm curious if your experience is similar to that, or yeah, maybe how it went with MetaOps in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like, I would say you hit it right on the nail, right? The traditional gaming space is much different when it comes to a development standpoint compared to Web3. Like in a Web3 game, they're more open to allowing for communities to kind of hop in and play the pre-developed game as you iron it out. Whereas in like the traditional space, they make sure that every single last component of the game is polished before releasing it, right? And then they periodically go through and make their updates. But I think what we did and what you're seeing a lot in the Web3 space as well is the ability to invite your community to come in and like help you create the game to what they enjoy, right? That can be seen as maybe a disadvantage to some people, but I personally don't think it is, because they're the ones who are truly playing the game and they get the most enjoyment from it. So having that firsthand experience and basically feedback from people who are consistently in the trenches playing the game itself is amazing. And I don't see how it could be, like I said, a disadvantage, just due to the fact that you always want feedback when you're trying to grow, especially from the marketing side, because you want to know what people thoroughly enjoy and what they don't like, so you can push more of what they do like rather than what they don't. That's just how we've done it, to be honest.
I feel like that is very, yes, that's the Web3 way for sure. And I think what I was hearing in some of the conversation was from a Web2 perspective, and it was sort of like, hey, the developer has this vision, this idea for how the game is going to be and how it should be, that maybe a user doesn't fully see in the alpha or something along those lines, and instead it just gives them a bad impression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, it's there's a very interesting way you have to approach any sort of player feedback, and this is Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, Web 6. Just from the perspective of, we as the developers know more about the project, we know more about the features we're planning, how we're going to implement something, than what the players can know. Because at the end of the day, players aren't in our daily stand-ups. They don't know every single thing that we're sort of driving towards. And for a variety of reasons, sometimes we have to keep some really epic announcements from our players until the contracts are signed and sorted out, and those sort of things as well. So it's one of the big interesting things I've found, because our players, especially for RTLOL, like and I'm sure MetaOps is the same. Like, I guarantee we have community members who have played twice as many games, 3 times as many games as anyone on our development team has, just because there's only so many hours in the day, and we also have to make the game as we sort of do it. So that feedback from our like engaged players is incredibly valuable. But yeah, always keeping in mind that we're looking at that feedback through the lens of, what do the players actually know about at the moment.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I've sort of seen at the moment, so we've got a big community tournament coming up this weekend. It's co-hosted with Campai Pandas on Blue Mint. We're super excited for that. And our players obviously are ramping up their testing, trying to work out what decks will be the most powerful. And I get messages from players going like, "Oh, I think green is way too weak." Like, and I'm sitting here going, if you wait a week when Seven Deadly Sins comes out, green's going to be one of the most powerful colors. But yeah,
I think that's one of the things that came up in this conversation. It's really important to know what's missing in the player's like view right now.
100%. Like, I would even go as far as to say, even if it's missing, giving them little hints and teasing it, right? Like, being as transparent as possible, keeping back the information that obviously you want to hold for big announcements, but allowing for them to have a understanding and trust in the development process itself is just something that I think would benefit, right? Just the Web3 industry as a whole when it comes to just creating games. Because like you said, users are, they're not as informed about every single last component of the development process, and they don't know what's coming in the future, which can lead to, let's say, a poor experience on the front of a game that's in alpha. But as long as you're very transparent about it being in alpha, I feel like people are typically a little more lenient. At least that's our community has been a little bit more lenient with bugs that do appear, and we made that like readily available for them to just mention what those were and what issues they did face just via Discord in a support ticket. And that kind of, allowed for us with those specific people to open up with them just a little bit and let them know big things are coming. We're working towards making these changes, and what you're seeing now is not the final result, right? It's just the infancy stage where we're building on top of, in a sense. But yeah.
Another thing comes to mind in this conversation was around how, especially right now in Web3, we still have a lot of projects, games that are made by entrepreneurs who are not that experienced at building games, right? Like they see this opportunity, they think there's a new meta to gaming, and they're jumping in, and they might not be that experienced in this whole process, and they could get lost in an overwhelming amount of feedback that a more experienced dev would know how to filter and understand that aligns with their vision. And so I know you two are both pretty experienced in this world, so like it's not something that you would have an issue with, but I don't know, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that's exactly why you always want to hire in people who have experience, right? In any role it is, any scenario. You don't want to find somebody that's brand new to it to lead the department, in my eyes, because you need people who can filter that information and can relay it. But I would go as far as to say make sure you have a vision, right? For companies that are currently in the process of dealing with what you just mentioned, make sure you have a vision for where you want it to go, and then allow for the community to add on top of that vision. Don't completely deviate from it, but add upon it and make it an even better experience, because as a developer you only have two eyes and one brain, right? So having four more pairs of eyes, and then what, four more brains on top of that, can just help you get to a point to where you may not have gotten as fast, right? So user feedback's super important, but never forget where your vision is and where you plan on going.
Yeah, like completely agree with that. And just to circle back, just there was a key word you said, Noah, that I just want to just pull out from the last thing you said and just like shine a big bright light on it. And you mentioned that a big part of like the community being willing to work with the developers, it comes down to trust. And that's such a critical part of the whole Web3 experience, really. Our community has to trust that everything we are doing is in their best interest, that we are, obviously working with them and with their feedback, but we're all driving towards the same goal. Like we want to make the best product we possibly can. And while I have no doubt there'll be decisions we might make along the way that they may personally disagree with, or they maybe not disagree, but maybe because they don't have access to all the information, it doesn't quite make sense why we might be doing a certain thing. But yeah, if your community has that trust that we know what we're doing, then yeah, that whole process just moves forward just so much smoother.
100%. And I mean, that just falls into building a community, right? You need to build this, like, what is it? This cohesive group of people who understand one another, but also trust each other at the same time, right? Like that's how you actually have a legitimate community that one supports each other, isn't very toxic, and makes sure that everybody's taken care of. It's a slow, methodical process, honestly. A lot of people in the Web3 space, just to kind of caveat onto it, they rush the process of trying to grow their community, which is very harmful, right? It's not as fast as, let's say just running advertisements and getting sales on stuff. You have to take a slow approach and build that trust, because trust isn't just acquired immediately, right? It's gained over time and over repeat actions of completing what you say you're going to and achieving big things, right? So as long as you continue pushing for that, trust will come, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like hitting milestones, being very transparent about the process we're going through and stuff like that. I think one of the other things as well, like being transparent when things don't go the right way. I mean, game development is such a crazy industry in general. Like there's so many things that a team will be juggling at any given time. Then you add, requests from the community, pressure potentially from stakeholders. Like there's so many different things all firing at once, and as anyone who's worked in game dev will know, and no, I'm sure you've got some great stories like this too, Noah. Like where you just finish a new feature for multiplayer, and all of a sudden the menu stops working, or just those sort of just crazy things that can happen. So, as at the end of the day, like we love to be transparent with our community. Say, look, we're aiming to have a certain feature done by this time, but if you miss that for whatever reason, like don't just like bury your head in the sand and just ignore messages till you get it done. Like be very open and transparent with the community. Say, look, hey, we missed it, but here's why. Show a gif of the game crashing or something if you need to. But yeah, that open transparency will go so far in terms of just building that community trust and showing why things happen the way they do. I know any opportunity I have to share a screenshot from Unity in our Telegram, I'll do. Just because, like people like seeing sort of under the hood and seeing what we're sort of working on.
Would you call that like building in public? How do you guys feel about that term?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you go, Noah. I'll drop
I
it
would
up to you.
say, I would say it is building in public in a sense, but it's just utilizing all of your resources to create very engaging content in my eyes, because the content creation process doesn't only begin with the game. It begins with everything that's created for the game itself, right? You may not want to show every single last component of like the character being built, but some people may find that entertaining, right? I know with like what we're pushing out on social media as of now, we're teasing like videos of a character being designed, right? So it's like the super interesting process that not a lot of people see, and it's so unique that sometimes they'll stop and watch it, right? So more of the lines of like, yeah, it is building in public, but at the end of the day, it's just using your resources wisely in my eyes and just showing a new side of the company, really.
Yeah, it's a very different approach to traditional Web 2 studios where everything is kept very heavily under wraps, like basically right up until marketing is willing to pull the trigger and start pushing towards a full release sort of thing. But I mean, for myself, it's a very refreshing change, and I think a lot of our developers on our team feel the same way, where there's nothing worse as a game developer than putting your heart and soul and blood, sweat, and beers into a feature, or even sometimes a full game, which can just get scrapped or completely pulled before it ever sees the light of day. And you're sort of sitting there going, well, there's 6 months of my life of some really amazing work that I did that no one will ever get to see or enjoy. Having that much more open, transparent approach, and pardon my language, just also not giving a shit. Like at the end of the day, there are so many amazing games being built out there. You don't need to sort of sit there and go, oh my God, I can't show anything because someone's going to steal my game. Because it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. And if you've got a team that's willing to put the work in and build that world-class product, then honestly, you should be happy to put it out there and show what you're building to the world.
100%. I could not agree with that more. Like you should never be afraid of somebody coming and stealing your design or the way you did it, right? You should be afraid of not executing your idea to the fullest, in my eyes, right? So it's like showing that behind the scenes. Everybody loves the behind the scenes, right? Like it builds more anticipation. It gets them feeling like they're a part of the process of actually developing the asset themselves, and it just like forms a more cohesive group, right? Like camaraderie makes you feel like you're actually there for the journey and you're not just the person who just plays the game, right? You get to see it be developed as well.
It's been interesting because I think it coincides with marketing becoming less stiff and professional over the past like decade as the internet and like user made content really takes over. It's like everyone's a little more comfortable just being a person, being like, yes, you might make mistakes, or this feature might not make it, whatever. It's all just a little more acceptable to everybody in marketing teams.
I'd love to sort of pivot where we're talking at the moment slightly to very much to a marketing perspective and get both of your thoughts on this, to sort of frame the question I've sort of got in my head at the moment. So we're obviously a week out, or just over a week out, from launching our Seven Deadly Sins set. So there you go. Spoiler for the Rainy community: 14th of February is the launch date. So we're in the middle of balancing out how much we reveal before the set goes live, to sort of try to walk both sides of this line of wanting to be open and transparent with our community, but also giving that sense of surprise and anticipation, that joy of the set comes out and you get to finally see all the cards, sort of thing. So I'd love
Yes.
to know from both of your perspectives how you think Web3 games specifically should be trying to walk that line.
I think it's like a gift to the community at this point. It's like you are openly building with them, and now you have this thing that like they're going to be really excited about, and like it's actually time to hold back a little bit and be like, "Ooh, guys, you're going to love this," but like I'm not giving it to you yet. And I think that makes it really fun at times if your community vibes with that. So I think of it as like build totally in public, and then when you're maybe 7 days out from something really cool that you're going to give the community, you give them teasers, but treat it a little more like a fun gift that you're hiding, in my eyes.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree full-heartedly with that. Like, the process of like teasing something should be just that, teasing, right? Building up the anticipation. I mean, how it goes in, let me say, like an editing style, you would want to build anticipation by showing the object in a sense, but not actually showcasing the full scale of it, right? Like all of the details and everything of that sort is like just a slow, methodical process. And as long as you can really, I would say, do it properly, you can generate a lot of hype and anticipation around things. I mean, we're currently doing it with our NFT collection we're launching as well. And I do it in a little bit of a different way, right? Where I like to throw out a little bit more so it catches that attention with, let's say, the first portion of it. And then I start to slowly reveal less and less as we go, just to build that anticipation, right? So I think it's a really good approach. And I mean, like Coop had said, you need to hold back certain things because it does actually build more like hype around it, because they don't know exactly what's coming and they don't know how they look. They don't know all of these other aspects of it. But at the end of the day, you want to give them enough to make them want to buy and purchase, right? And own that asset itself. But you don't want to give them too much to where they're like, well, why would I buy it? I already know what it looks like and I maybe don't care for it, or I want this other one, which may be, a little harder to get or something of that sort. But it's
Yeah,
an interesting.
yeah, it's a very interesting approach to marketing, I guess, where it's much more community involvement than you would say having it in. I mean, not even just not in Web2 gaming, but in a normal industry per se, because you don't always have that, very tight, very iterative sort of feedback loop coming back from your community. I mean, I like we posted a video yesterday. I'll see if I can share it on the stream because it looks really cool. And yeah, here we go, video file. Let's see if this is gonna work. I think it's this one. If this is the wrong video, I'm about to just leak something that we didn't mean to leak. So hopefully this is the right video file. But here we go. Yeah, it's the right one. Yeah, this is like one of the effects of like one of the cards in Seven Deadly Sins, where it just blasts like crazy meteors down on your opponent on the other side of the board. And yeah, like, because at the end of the day, we sit there, we listen to the feedback that our players are getting. Like, most of our team read most of the messages that gets posted on Discord and Telegram. And some of us make sure we read all of them because yeah, there's always some good stuff there. And even just from the comments on that video, oh, voice just broke. Cool. There was interesting feedback. We're like, oh, okay, maybe there's some different stuff we might do with the card or do with design, or maybe there's something we'll do in a set down the road. So yeah, feedback can definitely come in many forms. And I guess this is just trying to circle back to where we started talking specifically about like player testing and like alpha and beta and stuff like that. And yeah, it's not always going to be the, when we're talking about player feedback, it's not always going to be that sort of strict, like, oh, I played a game and I feel this card is too weak, or in meta ops, like, oh, the sniper rifle's OP, or whatever it happens to be. It can literally just be an offhand comment of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this card did this? Or, oh, maybe if we had this card, this wouldn't be so powerful. Like those sort of things. Like we do listen to player feedback, and yeah, sometimes those just innocent comments can, take us down directions that maybe we didn't think about. At the end of the day, yeah, we've got an amazing design team for Rainy Studios, but I guarantee we've got, I mean, our Telegram right now has over 2,400 members, and I can tell you right now, we don't have 2,400 designers working on the game. So yeah, that sort of feedback in all its forms can be super interesting.
I 100% agree there. I mean, like you were saying, you don't have 200 developers, but you have 200 minds working together to make the game better, right? Like, and that's honestly, feedback's like a huge portion of marketing, right? You always want to evaluate your sprints or your campaigns in multiple different ways, and you want to take what you learned from the past one and apply that to the next one, right? And make sure you're making necessary changes. If something messed up, you at least take that and correct it for the next time, and it just allows for you to progressively get better, right? Feedback is the exact same way. I mean, that's why surveys are done consistently, because people are, one, trying to collect information so they can make better decisions, but also get feedback on maybe certain items. Like, for example, if you just released a new NFT collection or a new card set, and you're like, hey, how powerful are these cards and how do they work into your deck? Like, getting 200 people to provide you with some of their feedback on if the card was not to their liking or if it didn't fit with that deck or anything of that sort can allow for you to, one, create videos to match it a little better to teach them, can give you a bunch of options to implement and change some of the components of the cards and all the other stuff. It's feedback's very important, and it allows for, honestly, companies to just get better directly from their like consumers, from their internal customers. It's beautiful, and I love it, honestly.
Yeah, it's an addictive feedback loop in a lot of ways. Like as game designers, there's a joy that you feel when you get to see someone enjoy something you have put out into the world, and yeah, having that tight community feedback loop. Even if it is, can be as simple as seeing people in Telegram like, oh, that was a really fun game, that was really close. Like feedback like that, again, not even directed directly to the developers, but it really does motivate us and drive us to do what we do. I'd love to just move this general topic that we're sort of touching on here in a much more Web3 direction, just for a second. And again, one of the things I love about having Twitter Spaces or AMAs like this is it means I can bring people in who know more about the space than I do, and I can pick your brains, and yeah, we all sort of get to hopefully learn a thing or two and get better at what we do. So one of the unique areas where a Web3 community may differ compared to, say, a more traditional Web2 gaming community is we know that in our community, you'll have a mixture of people who will either be interested in the game or are perhaps more interested in your product from a speculator or an investor perspective. And again, this is open to everyone. Draz, please feel free to jump in as well if if you want to throw your 2 cents in here as well.
That's cool. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd love to know what you can do to sort of balance out that feedback, and even in some cases determine where the feedback potentially is coming from. If it's coming from, maybe the perspective of an investor who has a lot of a certain card and wants that card to be worth more money, or I guess, Noah, in your case, like guns or skins or stuff like that, as opposed to just pure feedback from someone who is playing the game for the enjoyment of the gaming experience itself.
I'm gonna have to jump off, so I'll comment really quick. That it's very hard. Sometimes that's impossible. So I worked on a project where it felt impossible a lot of the times, because they frame the feedback as just potentially about the power of the gun or the item, and don't really mention any of the rest. And so it's very hard to say. But what I found was that community managers know some more about the people. Like if they're in there every day, they know and can pick up on what that person is interested in on a regular basis. And that can help frame some of the feedback. It's like your community manager has this extra context, or maybe it's you, like everyone who's really just in touch with the community. That is so helpful in my eyes.
Yeah, exactly like Coop was saying. If it's not your community manager, at least somebody in your marketing team or your side of marketing needs to be interacting with the community to know who everybody is, right? Like it shouldn't, obviously, if you scale to the point to where you're a massive game with over 100,000 users, it's going to be really hard to know exactly who, and I guess everybody in your community is, right? But at the end of the day, it should be a process to where you understand where they're coming from, right? In any scenario, if it's even speculative or just investor feedback compared to gamer feedback, I think each is important, right? Obviously, from the investor standpoint, they just want to make a little bit more money, but they may actually provide something that could be usable. So my suggestion there is just always take feedback for what it is and use what information that you gain from it that you see is beneficial, and know your community, right? For us, we have like a very non-toxic community, and everybody comes in and provides feedback. Even the people who barely play the game and are investors primarily, they come in and they provide feedback on what we could be doing better to make the overall community feel more connected, I'd say, as well as like from the gamer side. You can tell when somebody really desires something that's more enjoyable, like a new experience. So one of the things I would say that we ran into recently is the shotguns, right? Our shotgun, I personally feel like it's almost a sniper rifle at this point. Like you can hit somebody from a pretty far distance, but that was brought to our attention by somebody that was brand new to the game, right? They tried it once and then they kind of stepped away for a little bit to play some other tournaments, but then came back. And that feedback is enough for us to like then start doing some testing, seeing how overpowered it is, and just taking it serious. Because when it comes to like customer relationship management, that's super important to hear anybody and everybody out, even if they're a gamer or not, because you never know what their feedback could lead to. If it could lead to a new development in the company, or if it could lead to just an item becoming better, right? So I just try and take it, like I say, with a grain of salt. Everything that's provided, I take it seriously and just try and implement what will be the most beneficial for us, which, like Coop had said earlier, it takes people who have experience filtering through a bunch of feedback to determine that. And as long as you have the right person going through, like let's say the community manager who understands what the overall complaints and like benefits for the community are, then like having them be in charge of like checking over the feedback and then relaying that to developers is super important, so that the community's input can always be provided as well. So that was kind of like a long-winded answer, but
Yeah, no, that was very, very super interesting. Coop's had to drop off, but if he hears this later, thank you very much for joining us. And I guess thanks for putting out the question in the first place. That sort of got this conversation all sort of going. It's that feedback from our community is going to be an issue that every game, regardless of Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, obviously deals with. So it's hopefully it's interesting for our players as well to get a bit of insight and understanding into how we sort of approach that sort of feedback during an alpha and a beta stage.
100%. I mean, on that front too, like your community manager should always know, like what your community desires, and should make that voiced to the whole team as a whole. Like I know me as like the CMO, I may have like a specific thing that I'm shooting for, but I hope and expect our community manager to step in and be like, hey, you're taking this farther than what the community would like. They want this, they want that, and to just always make their voice heard, right? So it definitely definitely helps to have
Oh,
feedback.
absolutely. And as someone who sucks at first-person shooters, please don't nerf the shotgun, because if you do that, I've got no hope. So yeah, I'm that idiot that runs around with the noob cannon and doesn't really do much else. But yeah, um, I guess from that, I'll lead into our final question, because I know that we're going to have a quick chat a little bit later about some upcoming interesting stuff for both of our projects. And this is also inspired a bit by one of the questions Huncho's thrown into our chat, which we'll get to that question a bit later as well. When you're looking at gamer or player feedback specifically, how do you sort of balance out between casual, competitive, esports, like the sort of different feedback you'll get from different communities based on their focus in terms of how competitive or how serious they want to take the game?
Yeah, so what we like to do is just make sure that all information is just taken serious. But if it's coming from like an esports side, we try to focus heavily on, I would say that, just because we're trying to become a more esports centric company. But to distinguish the difference, it's more about the user itself, right? If you have data that you can go check and see how often they play and their data is connected to their Discord handle, then it's easier to be like, okay, this person plays like seriously, right? But I have a good understanding of, at least with our community, who is very esports centric, and when they're providing information to make it more competitive, like those people are typically the ones who show up to every tournament and play in every, game night that we have, just for the competition. And that feedback is super important because esports is one, entertaining to watch, but as a first person shooter, it's super important, right? Because competition is just one of those things that gamers really want. They want to be able to play with their friends. They want to be mentally challenged, like stimulated and all these other things while playing. So making the game a little bit more competitive is always nice, but you do run into the I would not say issue because I'm one of these guys, but you run into the front of not a lot of people are as good at playing games as others. So making the game enjoyable for everybody and keeping it balanced is one super, I wouldn't say hard, but a meticulous process that takes time, because you may implement something, for example, like if we were to nerf the shotgun, it could completely ruin somebody's competitive play, but make it more fun for somebody else, right? So we try to keep that in mind and just balance each and every component of the game. So for example, if we change the sniper rifle, we'll change something with the shotgun or with the assault rifle just to make sure it's all balanced out. And we use the feedback in a way to balance it. So we kind of like section it off like, hey, this was from somebody that's super competitive and they want this to be a more competitive feature. But we also take like the person who's like, hey, I just do this for fun. And yeah, we kind of combine them together, look at them and see how we could best fit that in the game, honestly. But I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, I think it did. It sounds very similar to how we approach player feedback, where yeah, like we definitely will look at different feedback from some players differently depending on how much they've played of the game and maybe where their skill level might lie in terms of our game or other like trading card games. That probably becomes very apparent when we get feedback from some players like, oh my god, this card's too powerful, and the rest of the design team sitting there going, well, no, it's actually really weak. You're just not playing it properly, or something like that. But I mean, even that can be a great opportunity to educate and create content that might again improve the experience for those players, because the general rule of thumb is if you've got one player giving you feedback, there's a bunch of other players who are all thinking the same thing. They're just not typing it to you or saying it to you in any way. So yeah, definitely looking at feedback through the lens of who it's coming from.
yeah.
And then yeah, as you touched on, the hard part, which I mean this is definitely like Huncho's sort of question there. Trying to make sure we are designing a game which can be fun for both the casual player, the casual tournament player, or the serious tournament player, are all things that we try to do. And one of the ways, I guess, we may as well directly answer Huncho's question. One of the ways we try to do that is we actually break down our player base into several different like player taxonomies or aliases, and we sort of, if you've read Mark Rosewater's article, he's the lead designer for Magic the Gathering, on Timmy, Johnnies, and Spikes. It's a really great idea of where this sort of is going, where not all cards are made for everyone. Um, there are cards in Seven Deadly Sins which are specifically designed for serious tournament play. These cards will enable combos. These cards will be key pieces in S tier decks for tournament play. There are other cards that honestly may see some tournament play, but they're also just they fit a certain player taxonomy really, really nicely. And Gluttony, one of the cards we have revealed, is a great example of that. Gluttony is a big green meatball. He is a huge creature for the cost. And there is a certain player demographic that likes playing big creatures and smacking them into their opponent's faces. These are the same people that, even to this day in WoW, will scream out Leroy Jenkins and charge towards the enemy in different games. So yeah, I guess not all cards are created for everyone, but we do definitely look at any design that we do from the perspective of how will this affect our different kinds of games and our different groups of players, I guess is the best way to sort of put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I wouldn't say the same for us because we obviously don't have cards, but with the weapons, we try to make sure they're all balanced for somebody that wants to play with that specific type of weapon, and they all can go against each other fairly well. But how we try to just incorporate, a more competitive aspect is we're working towards implementing new game modes, right? Like if it's a tournament mode or a just more or casual mode, we want to make sure those are in place. We're also working towards like implementing ranked modes. So rather than you just hopping in and playing a casual game with somebody just randomly, you can hop in and play against somebody who's ranked as well. There's a couple things I would love to mention about this, but I don't know if I can yet. But we have like these tournament features that we're working on building out at the current moment, which will allow for people to basically play against each other on the weekends, and it'll be super competitive, but it will be enjoyable, balanced, and allow for the more competitive person to play with a non-competitive person. So there's going to be components and aspects that allow for basically a regular everyday player who isn't as good at getting kills to catch up and beat somebody who can just massacre them with kills just by playing, let's say, consistently in the game and other stuff of that sort. So we try to just implement as much balance as possible. Like, yeah, you can be super, super good at, playing first-person shooters, but we want to give the other person who isn't as good, which is me, by the way, an advantage as well. So just balancing it in some sort of fashion is always our objective. And then just allowing for you to, one, play in a casual or ranked mode is another way that we kind of spread out our competitiveness.
Yeah, it sounds like, because there's things that we're doing as well, especially dedicated for the more competitive player that I can't talk about yet because they're not finished features. But yeah, I get the feeling that you and I are going to have to jump on another AMA or a Twitter space sometime soon and talk about the various things that we're both doing to cater for that kind of player, because I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion. And we might even grab our friends at Blue Mint as well for that one there as well, because obviously we're doing a lot of stuff with Blue Mint. You guys are obviously as well. They're definitely going to become a very big presence in the competitive gaming space, but obviously primarily focused on Web3 games.
100%, and they're great people. If
absolutely, yeah.
If anybody's listening to this and owns their own project that's a gaming project, I highly recommend you check out Blue Mint. They're amazing. The tournament hosting is seamless, and registration is quite easy. We literally used it the other day to set up a community game night, so it was pretty enjoyable.
So we used it for our community tournament about a fortnight ago. We're using it for our big Campai Pandas tournament that's on this Saturday. So that's a $4,000 USD prize pool for that one. And honestly, like, there's no tournament partner we would trust more to make sure that we're going to, like, if we're running an event of that caliber, we need to know that everything is going to go seamless. And yeah, I have nothing but absolute faith. I don't want to name drop anyone, but if you are working with a Web3 game and you'd like an introduction to Bloomint, please reach out. I'm sure that goes for yourself as well, Noah. Like, I'm pretty sure either of us would be more than happy to make that introduction, because they are, yeah, a genuinely very, very good team at what they do.
100%.
All right, cool. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Our AMAs do tend to go a little long sometimes, but hopefully we'll try and keep this one on time. I'd love to give you the mic for like a quick 30-second spiel, Noah, because I know you've got some interesting stuff coming up, specifically, I believe, on the Avalanche network as well.
Yeah, so to kind of cover that, but mainly to tease a little bit about the thing we have going on. We have a mint coming up, right, on the 25th of February, which will be our first ever NFT collection dropped over on the Avalanche blockchain. We have a couple others on different chains, but this is our first one, kind of opening us up to a multi-chain aspect. And with this NFT collection, it's going to be like a 3-in-1 NFT, right? So you're going to get 3 in-game assets for just one NFT itself. And we kind of released a little bit of a video showing off the first asset within the collection. Not completely finished, but shows it being worked on, and teases what's to come. And there's 2 other items that we have yet to release. But what I will say is it's going to be thrilling, and it's going to increase the playing experience a lot. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend you check out the video over on our Twitter, and you'll be able to at least get a glimpse of what we are working on and implementing into the collection itself. But yeah, it's going to be fun. That's that's what I will say. It's going to make your playing experience a lot more enjoyable. And who knows? Maybe some interoperability will be incorporated.
Yeah, it'd be super interesting if there were theoretically different games building on the Avalanche network who, were working together. Maybe they're doing AMAs together, and yeah, potentially dropping NFTs across both projects that have utility in each of the games. That'd be. I'm speaking completely
Super.
hypothetically here,
Yeah.
but yeah, that'd be definitely a cool thing to see, I think.
I think it would be dope. I mean, you're right. Speaking
Yeah.
hypothetically here, it'd be phenomenal to see that. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. I mean, even better if they're games in very different genres too.
yeah,
It can be a really great way for someone who maybe is really active in one of the communities. Again, this is completely hypothetical. To get that exposure, and maybe go try a different game out. Maybe find something they like. Maybe find something they don't like, and that's okay too. Because obviously the NFT would still have utility within their primary game. But yeah, anything that sort of helps drive awareness and exposure of other awesome games and awesome communities can never be a bad thing.
exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
Might leave that one there at that. But yeah, as it Noah, thank you so much for joining us, and obviously thank you very much to Coop as well for putting the tweet out that they got the whole ball rolling on this one. Yeah, please feel free to hang around. I think Draz, I think we've got a bunch of questions from our community. Just before that, one thing sorry, Draz, to get you all excited there. There's just a couple of quick things I want to put out there for our Rainy community members. The first one being there will be at least 2 Medium posts going out hopefully this week. We're sort of putting the final touches on those at the moment. There's a lot of obviously cool updates, but just to, I guess, give the quick list, and I'll put these in like a Twitter thread and stuff like that later on today. Obviously the big one, we've got our Campai Pandas community tournament coming up this weekend. So that's Saturday. If you go to bluemint.com, you'll see the registration form there. It is completely free to play. You do not need to own any NFTs or tokens or anything. And yeah, the first place prize in that tournament is a Campai Pandas NFT. So yeah, just a huge thank you to Campai Pandas for working with us on this one. Again, we enjoy partnering with amazing communities, and yeah, if you've interacted with any of the pandas, I guess the campais, yeah, they are a really awesome community over there. So strongly recommend following them on Twitter, jump in their Discord, tell them Chad Rainey sent you, all that sort of good stuff. We have what else? Oh yes, we are dangerously close to launching our new standalone build for the Lords of Light. That's going to be some of our community members have had the opportunity to help us with testing that. The feedback we've had from everyone who's tested it so far is just amazement. The performance improvements, the graphical improvements, the game feels so much smoother and more responsive. So it's a really huge update. Yeah, James knows what I'm going to talk about, that one there. Yeah, so as soon as that's ready to go, we'll obviously announce that on Telegram, Discord, Twitter, all the usual places. So yes, make sure you're following us on the various social media platforms, and we'll pop that one out there as well. And the other one, yes, God, a lot of announcements this week. So the Rainy Signature Collection. We've teased this a little bit on Twitter. It is a exclusive 1 of 1 NFT drop. It will go live. The auction will go live tomorrow, about just under 24 hours from now. That will run for 7 days, right through until the 14th of February, so Valentine's Day. And that is, it's the best way I can describe it. It is our love letter to the incredible art that is being produced for our game. And it is basically our gift to the high-end serious collectors that exist within our community. The auction, tomorrow, Ash. The auction will run for 7 days, so from the 7th of February to the 14th of February. That will be exclusive to the Avalanche blockchain network, and that will be hosted by our friends at JPEGs. So again, if you go to jpegs.com now, they've got the teaser up on the site. But yeah, obviously that will go live in just under 24 hours from now, and we'll definitely be tweeting about it and putting out more information about it there as well. That leads us into the 14th. God, sorry, apologies for the wall of information, but yeah, this will all be in mediums and all be on Twitter and stuff like that as well. On the 14th, that is the release date for the 7 Deadly Sins. That is the date that the set will go live for public sale. At this stage, our back-end team is working like crazy to make sure that we're all set up and ready to go for the systems we're putting in place for you to also acquire those packs via rainbows and unicorns. So with that, we're doing some really cool stuff this time around, because obviously we're aware that a lot of our community are sitting on a lot of rainbows and unicorns from being part of our community and staking our Rainy token. So you'll have the choice of entering both raffles, where you can buy tickets for rainbows or unicorns to have the chance to win packs that way. And there will also be auctions running on there as well. At this stage, the plan is that both the raffles and the auctions will run for 20 hours, and they'll be back to back. So the idea is basically that we'll try to make it so that there's always going to be, every couple of days, there'll be raffles and auctions ending in a time where, would be ideal for our different community members. Obviously very aware that we have a very global community with the Lords of Light. And yeah, basically between now and then, there'll be a few more card leaks coming out. They won't be coming directly from the Rainy Twitter. They'll actually be from some of our partners. We'll be retweeting them, obviously. But yeah, if you're not following MetaOps, if you're not following Campai Pandas, if you're not following Avalanche Gaming, you might miss out on some of the cool leaks and spoilers for 7 Deadly Sins. So yeah, that will go live on Valentine's Day. Which just felt like the right day to release a set literally called the 7 Deadly Sins. And I think that's everything. So yeah, as I said, there'll be mediums going out this week with all those details. But yeah, just a lot, as always, a lot going on. And yeah, obviously very grateful to our community for supporting us with everything that we do. So yeah, Draz, if you want to hit us with some questions, and we'll
Yeah,
go from
sure.
there.
Okay, no worries. Just quickly, I suppose, just from a couple from the Telegram, just Instant Coffee. What are some of the past projects you've been involved in? Heard you dropped them in the recent Twitter space.
Yeah, so I was on a Twitter space hosted by MetaRun last night. A really cool game. They're doing a multiplayer endless runner, which is, to the best of my knowledge, like, is a pretty unique mashup of genres there. I can't think of any other truly multiplayer endless runners that I've seen before. So yeah, definitely a cool little game they're or I say little game, a huge game that they're working on. And yeah, I may have let slip some of the games I've worked on in the past. So I mentioned that I've worked with Netflix Gaming. I've worked with SMG Studios. I've done a bunch of consulting work on very large games, right up to AAA like publishers that unfortunately I can't talk about. But yeah, just definitely letting our community know that yeah, like the team that we've got at Raini Studios, like, believe me when I say it is very much a world-class team that we've got here. I know Hitbox was on our AMA last week and was able to rattle off a bunch of projects that they've been involved with. I'm not gonna Hex, our lead developer, I'm not sure if he's publicly spoken about the projects that he has worked on, but feel free to pester him in the Telegram channels, and it's up to him, obviously, if he wants to name drop those. But yeah, probably the big one, because a lot of the Rainy community are aware that I was involved in the project over a year ago now, back in the very early days. I actually helped with a lot of the design for the things that, what is now the Genesis set. I like the whole staking gem mechanic was myself and another designer from my old consultancy. We sort of put all that in place. But yeah, obviously I unfortunately had to go on to other projects, and yeah, one of those was a game with Netflix Gaming that should be coming out in the next couple of months, actually. They're putting the final touches on it now. But yeah, definitely very, very happy to be back with Rainy Studios.
Sweet. Definitely got some serious skills in that skill set of the team, that's for sure. Just a question from Michael J and Z. Not sure if it was mentioned, but will the new heroes have abilities other than the current ones of adding a colored gem?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just to frame this question a little bit, obviously, in the Lords of Light, you select a hero, and that hero will give you a colored gem of whatever their color alignment happens to be, which is a fun way of sort of speeding up the early game and making it a little bit easier for players to build, 3 or 4 color decks. Our plan at this stage is, as far as the Lords of Light are concerned, the only in-game effect, the only effect they will have on gameplay is giving you that starting gem. There may be other what can I say? There may be other games that Rainy Studios is involved with where those heroes may have different utility. But specifically, as far as the Lords of Light is concerned, the heroes basically one will be a cosmetic change, because there'll be different tiers of heroes, and they'll change the profile picture that you have in game. Sorry, not profile picture, the display you have in the game, the character with 420 health. But yeah, in terms of actual in-game functionality, it will just be that colored gem.
Okay, sweet. Will there be anything like in-game guilds when the game launches, so guilds can battle each other? Again, from Michael J and Z.
It's an awesome feature. We'd love to do it. Will it be there at launch? No. Why? Developer resources. Is it something that we have discussed and would love to do at some point in the future? Absolutely. And again, keeping in mind that there's going to be probably a very constant sort of answer here where, like, the Lords of Light team is assisting the other teams within Rainy Studios that are working on other titles. We obviously announced that with our rebrand announcement. So yeah, don't be surprised if theoretically, if when we launch something like in-game guilds, it wasn't exclusive to RTLOL and was more designed to be a guild that you can have with you across the Rainiverse, to put it that way.
Nice. From Chipu, how are market conditions swaying decisions right now?
Cool. Yeah, so I'll answer that from my personal perspective as the lead designer of the game. Um, and apologies if this isn't the answer that some of our community wants to hear, but I couldn't care less about the market conditions. My job, and I've said this many times on Telegram, my job is to make the best product, the best game that we can possibly put out there for our community. Um, you know, what the market decides to do based on that, based on the work that we put in, that's up to the market to decide, really. Um, Having said that, is it nice working in Web3 when it feels like potentially we're heading? I don't want to say anything because I don't know. Like, I'm not an investor. I'm not a financial advisor. Not financial advice. Do your own research. All those sort of things. But it does definitely feel like maybe the worst of the bear market could potentially be over. Which obviously, as a studio on working on Web3 games, is makes it a better time to be working on Web3 games, basically. And it's definitely not a coincidence that as market conditions and as the Web3 ecosystem is feeling a bit more alive, a bit more vibrant, a bit more healthy, that you are obviously noticing us sort of slowly transition from our heads down, hard at work, build a game, to our more still heads down, hard at work, build a game, but hopefully with more transparency and more of a serious push to get RTLOL out in front of everyone else.
Excellent. RA Verse in Telegram, I'd like to know what actually changes with the move from alpha to beta within the game.
Yeah, cool. So what you'll see when we make the first, sorry, let's take a step back. The first standalone build that everyone gets their hands on, honestly, is probably going to feel pretty similar to what you currently have on WebGL, outside of a lot of stability, bug fixes, and just general quality of life improvements. It really does feel in some regards like you're playing a brand new game. Once we hit that and we've got that standalone build stable to a point where we're confident that if we start bringing in significant numbers of players, that everything is just going to work. That obviously isn't just the front end client. That's us doing a lot of work on the back end as well, to make sure that our servers are ready to handle, theoretically tens or hundreds of thousands of players all hitting them at once. Then yeah, once we're sort of at that stage, that's where we're going to formally move to open beta, where the game is much more open. We've got like a new website coming and stuff like that. We're going to definitely be doubling down on our marketing efforts. That's sort of definitely the point where we're basically saying to the world, hey, come play our game. We think it's pretty awesome, and we think you will too. At some point during the open beta period, we will make the transition from our current every card is unlocked for any player to you need to have cards unlocked on your account to be able to play with them. You'll have plenty of notice for when that happens. And the cool thing we're working on actually at the moment, hope that the back end team aren't going to kill me for mentioning this early, but it's easy to ask forgiveness and permission. We're definitely trying to make sure that you can own digital collectible versions of cards. I don't like the term NFT because it can be off-putting for some gamers, but digital collectibles will support across our 3 primary chains, so that being Ethereum, BSC, and AVAX. And we'll also support you having them in different wallets as well, as long as you can authenticate and sign to say that the wallet is yours, obviously. Because at the end of the day, like the whole concept of decentralized ownership of digital assets, like it shouldn't be a case of we tell you, oh, you've got to have it in one wallet or you've got to have your cards on this chain. It should be more a case of you can have your assets where you want them to be, and we will support you in doing that. So yeah, it's definitely the sort of what we're driving towards. So yeah, that will happen at some point during the open beta stage. You'll see a lot of the in-game economy sort of turn on at that point in time as well. So don't be surprised to start seeing things like leaderboards, battle passes, those sort of things sort of all kicking in. And then, yeah, obviously we're driving towards full launch, which will happen alongside the launch of our Photon token. And that will be where, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we have one of the best, if not the best, digital trading card games in the world. And at that point, I would welcome anyone to come in, play our game, and try to tell me otherwise. And
Very
I've got to
nice.
start making grandiose boasts like that, because someone's going to come in and prove me wrong. But Brian Kibler, if you're listening, I'd love to play you in a best of 3 in RTLOL.
No, we definitely love to hear it. That's for sure. It's good to be confident. I think so. What you're saying there is basically, if you have your cards on any of the chains as you play the game, you don't have to move them. They can stay on the chain, and all of them will be available within the game.
Yes, needs to be a chain that we support. So if
Of course, yeah.
someone figures out a way to move our NFTs to Solana, well, we don't support that chain. Our game's not going to read them. And the other thing as well is, so our backend servers will be checking ownership when you go into a game. So one of the things people need to be aware of is, if you've, say, got a card up for sale on JPEGs, for example, and you queue up for a game, if someone happens to buy that card on you, when you connect to the server, it's going to say, well, hang on, this isn't a valid deck. You don't own this particular NFT. And it will just drop you back out to the menu and let you know what's happened there, basically. So just probably something fairly unique to Web3 trading card games. Be aware that if you are involved in the trading and that sort of aspect of our digital collectibles, be aware that you obviously will need to have all of the assets that you put into a deck when you go into a particular game. Because I guess the equivalent would be that, if you're playing it like a physical, like Magic or Pokemon tournament, and halfway through a game someone like takes a card out of your deck because they bought it off you. We just need to make sure that we balance that out.
Cool. This must have been dropped somewhere in one of the channels, but RAverse is asking, because the founders did say that they booked some travel to go overseas to do some meetings. But RAverse is asking, who are they planning to meet in the US? I don't know if you can answer that.
Cool. I wasn't aware that we dropped that publicly, but our founders will be heading overseas at some time soon. I'm not going to be any more specific than that because people like to dox things. But they will be overseas. They'll be meeting with a bunch of different people in both the gaming space, the publishing space, and the venture capitalist space. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. But obviously, you guys know, as soon as we can talk about things publicly, we will. But we obviously don't want to name drop who we're meeting with. But I mean, to put it in perspective, they'll be over there for several weeks, and there'll be a lot of travel happening in that time. So they'll definitely be racking up the frequent flyer miles.
Excellent. Good to see. No, there are always lots of things going on in the background. So it's really great to see. Huncho's asked, can you explain why the cards with the same name must be unique to a single deck rule exists? And if it's going to be the rule for future tournaments, also, is there a way to make it less restrictive?
Yeah, cool. So I'm going to answer this question backwards. From the perspective of, is there a way to make it less restrictive? We are definitely open to player feedback, community feedback, for any changes we may choose to make to this particular rule. But let me explain the why behind it, because that may help players understand why we have this rule in place in the first place. And if they are going to make suggestions, then obviously knowing why we have the rule there definitely should hopefully help with that. So the rule's there for several reasons. The main one actually being that from time to time, over the next 10 years of working on the Lords of Light, we're going to get some things wrong when it comes to metagame, deck balancing, card balancing, and so forth. At some point in the next 10 years, we will print a card that warps the meta completely, is too powerful, and we may not pick it up in time to actually be able to adjust it before, theoretically, the 2027 Lords of Light World Championships. Don't quote me on that. There may not be a World Championship in 2027. I'm throwing that out there as a hypothetical. If that is the case, then by forcing players to win a game in each round with 2 different decks, great, you may have the most broken deck in existence, but you still got to win with one of the other decks as well. So it's a way for us to hopefully balance out broken metagames without dropping my age too badly here. If you played Magic back in the mid to late 90s. You'll remember the summer of Necropotence, where basically Necropotence decks were just not even a close first above everything else. They were disgustingly above everything else, where the whole metagame had warped to a point where you either played Necro decks or you played a very specific deck designed to beat Necro decks. And even then, that deck wouldn't even have a 50% win rate. Like, it was, even if you built a tailor-made custom deck that only beat this one deck, it still couldn't even do it over 50% of the time. So the meta was just horrible. And it's not a great experience for anyone. Like, yeah, maybe it's fun beating up on someone with a super powerful deck, but if the meta becomes that stagnant that there's only really one deck that you can choose to play, it's just not a fun experience for anyone involved. So hopefully the 2-deck rule sort of helps with that. The way we do that, and again, very much open to feedback if there are better ways to do this, is the cards with unique names can't be used in both decks. Why do we do that? Primarily, so if we release a card that's way too strong, you can't run them in both. And we hope that it encourages both more skillful deck building as well as more skillful deck playing within our actual tournament scene. The goal is that, I hope, even at the moment, that we have enough cards to have that sort of engaging metagame where you can choose to play, whether it's Elementals, Banish, Kitsune, Phoenix, Wenlambo, Crypto Band decks. There's a lot of different decks in our ecosystem. And again, as we sort of start rolling out more sets, and obviously, we've publicly said our plan is to release several sets this year. Obviously, 7 Deadly Sins being the first one, which is dropping next week. As you've got more cards to choose from, hopefully the goal would be that we can have this really vibrant metagame where there's a bunch of very competitive, very valid decks that hopefully won't have too much overlap on key cards, and that our tournament ecosystem is healthier as a result. Is our long-term goal.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hope that answers the question. But yeah, as I said, we're very much open to player feedback. But yeah, that's the goal behind it is to have a more vibrant metagame, to let people play with a wider variety of cards and decks. And I'll be honest, part of this is marketing from our perspective too. We're planning on streaming and broadcasting and recording as many of our tournament games as we can. The more different cards that people can see of our game, hopefully that gets people interested, and hopefully they play the game as a result of that.
But yeah, the animations that animation's fantastic on the latest one there.
Yeah, that one. Was very, very happy when I saw the first art pass on that one. So there's a bunch of other ones that will get revealed over the next week or so as well. So
cool.
Definitely a lot of cool stuff.
Okay, Ash Hole is asking, what is the Aussie slang colloquialism that you've got the team to adopt?
If you don't like swearing, mute me for the next mute me until the message at the bottom of the screen disappears, basically. But yeah, there's a Aussie slang. I picked this up off a very good friend of mine, who she's actually getting married next month. So congratulations to them. I know they don't listen to this, but I'll throw it out there anyway. And the saying is, we're not here to fuck spiders. And I'm aware that anyone who's not from Australia, that probably sounds super weird. So let me explain what that means. It's basically a way of us saying we're not here to mess around. We are not here to be the second best TCG. We're not here to be the second best Web3 game. Sorry, Noah. We love you guys, but yeah, we want to be the number one. We want to be the best digital TCG that we can possibly be. We want to put out the best product that we possibly can, and that is a sentiment that is felt across our entire team in everything that we do. The level of professionalism, the level of care, the level of dedication that we put into this product is unlike anything I've seen in my many, many years of working in gaming, ignoring Web 2, Web 3, Web 5. This is a team that very much has both the passion for what they want to do, but they have the skill to execute it as well. And it's super exciting as a game developer to have the privilege of working with a team like that who is just going to do ridiculous things. So so we're not here to fuck spiders, basically.
Okay, nice. It is a weird one, really, for anybody who's not in Australia.
Yep.
Just a question here from Unreal Stutter Engine. Anything coming for the first Raini NFTs like Satoshi Nakamoto by Alessandro Picasso? He's wondering if you should pick up a few. But I suppose just an extension to that question as well, I suppose, is with the artist NFTs, a while back, a snapshot was taken of all the golden chromas, and that's being used for turning into legacy infused NFTs, etc., for the games. But is there going to be incentive built in still for people to put their NFTs together to form a golden chroma, and will they be able to be turned into legacy NFTs as well in the future?
Yep. This would be a perfect question for Arkin to answer. He's much more looking after the day-to-day aspect of our non-game specific NFTs. Should you pick up a few? I'm never going to answer that question because I don't know whether you should or not. That's up to you completely. I don't know your personal circumstances. I don't know your finances. I don't know how well you like that art. So it's not really something that I can answer, unfortunately. The best thing I would suggest is actually probably jumping into Telegram and Discord and chatting with our community. People like Draz, people like Seb and that in our community are much more clued in on that art specific side of our NFTs that we've done and that we are continuing to do as well. There's the Artheron drop coming up late, I believe it's March.
March.
Will be, yep. That one, the art on that looks ridiculous. Like it's, but yeah. Sorry for giving Unreal Stutter Engine. Love the username, by the way. As someone who started out, the very first gaming project I worked on was a mod for the original Unreal tournament. Just to give you an idea of my age now. But yeah, that specific question, I would jump and talk to our community because they'll be able to give you a better answer than I will.
Yeah, sweet. It would be good to get that clarified, actually, just for the ongoing trading of the artist NFTs and things like that, because Golden Chroma really was a fantastic idea, and it would be great to have it ongoing. Nathan Elliott has asked, will the card renting system be implemented at or during beta? Probably.
Our goal would be that we try to get it online either at launch or as close to launch as possible. We are looking at both either doing it internally ourselves or working with some external partners who have experience in building this particular kind of functionality. But obviously a big part of this will come down to how well they are able to execute it, where our players' user experience is our top priority. I was literally talking with Arkin about this late last night. And yeah, like just again, and this is a constant thing. I'll give this answer for a lot of these sort of questions where will we build this functionality or will we have this functionality within our game? Yes. That part's easy. Like I can give you a yes to that. That's no problem at all. But in terms of how we execute on this, it really does come down to wanting to make sure that we have the most seamless, most frictionless user experience that we possibly can. Because if nothing else, if you are someone who's, for example, is an investor or sitting on a large number of NFTs and you want to be able to rent them out to other community members to play the game, you want that experience for those users to be just as seamless and smooth as possible. So yeah, that's very much our goal would be to make sure that we don't put it out there if it's half-baked. We want to make sure that we've got that really solid experience. If we can get that in for launch, that's awesome. But if not, I would rather take the little bit of extra time to make sure that we build it correctly. Again, building that world-class leading product, than put it out there half-baked and have bugs or issues around it. So yeah, launch or after launch would be the timeline to be expecting that for.
Excellent. Mate, that's it for the questions, but I wasn't sure if you wanted that prompt regarding the signature collection that you sort of mentioned there at one point. Do you want to talk about that still?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously the signature collection, the auction starts for it tomorrow. Where are the notes I left myself? Because I remember I left notes too, so I wouldn't forget things.
Yeah, it's in the private
Where are
chat too.
Yeah, where is it? Da, da, da. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. So yeah, as I said, the signature collection, it's a one-on-one art NFT drop. It's going to be hosted by our friends at JPEGs. So obviously that will be on the Avalanche ecosystem, Avalanche network. So obviously the winner of the auction will receive, the one-of-one art drop, which, like I said, huge shout out to the art team behind it. It looks incredible. Like it really does. Well, you guys will all see it tomorrow. But yeah, for the person who wins this particular auction, so I need to stress this won't be like, because obviously NFTs can be traded, they can be sold. So this will be something exclusive for the first owner of any NFT within the signature collection. You will receive a couple of additional perks on top of obviously owning the NFT. And that basically is three things. One being that you'll be able to use that NFT as an in-game profile picture within the Rainiverse suite of games. So that should be something. And again, that will be obviously a very exclusive. If you see someone with that particular, profile picture in game, it is a one-of-one collection, so that is very much a one-of-one sort of profile picture they have there as well. That person will receive a 1-hour private session with any members of the Raini Studios team that they would like. So there's a few different ways that you could choose to use that. You could sit down with Artken and myself and do a 1-hour deep dive on game design. You could sit down with our QA team and do an hour of playtesting for a tournament if that would work for you. You could sit down with our co-founders, Artken and Mindspheres, and pick their brains on what it's like being founders of a Web3 game studio. So very much open territory there, with the caveat that obviously if there are any topics which potentially might be under NDAs or that we can't talk about publicly for whatever reason, we will have to unfortunately steer away from those topics. But pretty much you would have carte blanche in terms of what we can talk about with the team for that hour. And finally, and this is the one I know a lot of our community members are probably going to be excited for. The first owner of any NFT within the Raini signature collection will have the opportunity to work with our design team and design an in-game card in their likeness. So if you...
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What gets better than that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty interesting thing. Again, there's some caveats on this one as well. We will not let you design a card that will completely break the metagame or is just ridiculously overpowered. So our design team does have final say on what the card will do. Our art team will have final say on what the card will look like. Obviously, the person will airdrop a copy of the card to this person as well, obviously. And that will be released in a future set. So we're not committing to doing it in any particular set, primarily because as you'll see more and more as we move forward, like different sets that we have planned for the Lords of Light will be basically built around different themes, different mechanics, stuff like that. So we've obviously announced like 7 Deadly Sins. The next set 2 is codenamed Seasons, because that was the first set that had our season cards in them. Set 3, which should be launching around the same time that the game goes into full launch. The current code name for that is Formations. So I don't think I've actually said that on an AMA before. I know I dropped it on Discord, but I don't think anyone noticed. But yeah, Formations is the current working title for set 3. And set 4's working title is None of Your Business, just because I'm not telling you what it is yet. But yeah, set 4 is in active development at the moment as well. But yeah, so like I said, the caveat being we won't let you design a card that's completely overpowered. We won't let you do or generate art for it or work with our art team. Like, we're not going to print a card that visually is offensive or falls outside of the style that we've established for our cards. And yeah, we'll release it in a set that makes the most sense for that card to be in. That could theoretically mean that we hold it back for a set where maybe it's going to have a mechanic that lines up thematically or mechanically with what the card is going to do. But yeah, so yeah, and as I said, that will just be for the first owner of any NFT in the signature collection. Like I said, there will all be one of one NFT drops. There will not be we're not going to flood the market with these. There's not going to be a heap of them. They're going to be very, very exclusive. But yeah, like I said, these are literally our love story, our love letter to just the incredible art that's being generated for our game, and a way for us to sort of share that with part of our community.
But immortalized forever within the Lords of Light game, which is awesome.
Yeah,
for the winner. Well, that's it for the
Yeah,
questions,
exactly.
mate.
So, I mean, I guess as well, like if you particularly don't want a legendary made in your likeness, if you just would rather make I don't know, we'll make a card for your dog. If String from Chubbyverse wins, we'll make a card dedicated to fried chicken. So yeah, we're definitely open to what that card will look like. But yeah, if you've ever posted that message in our Telegram of like, I'd love to have a card made for me, then yeah, this is a way that we can make that happen for you.
That's awesome. That's all the questions.
Cool. Yeah. So, God, I swear we'll get our AMAs to run closer to the hour like we plan one of these days. But yeah, just a lot of stuff going on at the moment. I'd like to give a huge thank you to Noah for joining us, and obviously to Coop as well. If you're not following, Noah, where's the best place for our players to reach out, chat, follow you, all that sort of good stuff?
Me personally, or for MetaOps?
That's up to you.
All right, for MetaOps then. So
Yep.
the best place to reach out to us is one in our Discord, which is discord.gg/MetaOps, or on Twitter itself, which you can find us under the handle of MetaOps Gaming. And if you reach out to us, because our messages are open, we'll respond back as soon as possible. If you pose any questions, we highly recommend you, or provide feedback, we highly recommend that done in our Discord via support ticket. But we are a pretty open community of non-toxic gamers, and we'd love to have anybody who's willing to hop over and play. I mean, if you're watching this at the current moment and you want access to the game and you don't want to go buy an NFT on Solana, because why would you? Just shoot a message in a support ticket in our Discord and say Noah sent you, and we'll go ahead and give you access immediately.
You realize that our community is about to go spam your Discord with like memes and pictures of unicorns and all that good stuff, right?
Do it.
Yeah.
I welcome the unicorns. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, Draz, thank you obviously so much for helping to organize these for the community. Yeah, like we love doing these, and yeah, obviously having you help out with them is a huge reason as to why we can do these on a weekly basis.
I'm very glad to help, and very glad for the information. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, have a great week, everyone. And yeah, we'll catch you back here next week, same time. 24 hours before the launch of the 7 Deadly Sins.
Nice.
Have a great day, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.